I called to order the meeting, the public meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Albany. Today is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023, at p.m. We have one item on the agenda to say project number 00543. There's an application for a hearing modification number 2 section. Or is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's project. I've gotten.
Was that the new one?
Yeah, project number 0543. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, stating that again. Oh yeah, the project. Okay, so there's no variance. Anyway, okay, so project number 00543. Property address is 64th Avenue. I'm going to turn stuff out and I'll see. Representing Egypt. Next use from the south end. Proposal is to modify the use of an existing use variance from manufacturing and small electronic parts to heavy commercial services or foreign. This has come in front of the board initially a couple months ago.
Yeah, it came in front of the board July 12th, and the applicant is using the presentation from that meeting as well, so it might look familiar.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Was something the board's already looked at and seen and had a preliminary discussion, but I think it wasn't a public hearing.
Correct. It was a public meeting, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you. I think they will stop here for now.
Hi, good evening.
I just asked that you turn the microphone on and speak into the microphone, so we have that on the record. That's perfect. Thank you.
Hi, nice to see you all again. Andy Brick, the Brick Law Firm, on behalf of the applicant. With me this evening is Mr. Kern and his son Seamus, who are the operators of the current core business, who will be relocating a portion of their business to this location on 4th Avenue. If you recall, when we were here in July, we had a pretty in-depth discussion about the zoning issues involved in this. The property does have an existing use variance for light industrial manufacturing, and we were seeking to modify that to allow for what Commissioner Glass has determined is both appropriately heavy commercial services as your USDO definitions apply. We're somewhat, I think you'll agree when they explain the nature of the operation, we're somewhat between definitions. If you look at the definition of heavy commercial services, it's not really what they're going to be doing in the property. But at the same time, we have the variance for light manufacturing, and light industrial manufacturing isn't what they're going to be doing either. When I was here in July, the information that I provided to you on what the property was going to be utilized for, what was proposed to be utilized for, wasn't completely accurate. We had a follow-up meeting with staff, with Amanda and Avi and Brad Glass, and the Currents came in and explained what they were going to do with the property. It turned out that what they're seeking to do is far less extensive than what we presented in July. They're basically looking to utilize it as overflow storage for flooring. We thought that there was going to be some type of fabrication or manufacturing occurring there, and there is not. It's simply going to be utilized solely for storage, and then accessed sporadically when either something needs to be pulled from storage or added to the storage. But it's an overflow storage, which I think drastically changes the scope and extent of the request that we were making. We are still seeking a modification. There is also the argument that under your new definition of light manufacturing, what they're proposing there may meet that definition. And wouldn't require modification. We can discuss that or explore that a little bit further. But what I'd like to do more importantly is present the current views so they can explain to you what they propose to do with the property. They can let you know what they're already doing in the south end. They have a number of buildings there now, and we'll answer any questions that you may have about the proposal.
Would you like me to go through the slideshow because it does describe the business? Would that assist in the presentation?
We're commercial wood flooring contract.
Basically, we build gymnasiums for a living. We do a lot of theatrical work, a lot of historical renovation work. So we don't intend on shipping a gymnasium to this location and unloading it and then reloading it. But half a pallet of wood that came from this gymnasium might get stored there. Our building at 421 South Pearl is literally to the rafters. So that's where we started looking for another building. That building, on occasion, we would be there twice to 3 times a week. And then there's weeks we're not there at all. We're not requiring any parking. We're not requiring any fencing. No dumpster. No overnight parking. So quite simply, just storage. Now, I think there's an artesian end of what's in the.
Right, we were looking at the idea of making the argument that what they're doing is artisan manufacturing. But again, there's no actual manufacturing going to be taking place here. It's literally a storage building, an overflow storage building for their existing operations in the South End, which are, thankfully successful. They just need a little more space to store when they are doing foreign projects. What would be stored, as I understand it, is wood floors, no chemicals or hazardous materials or anything like that. It's just wood.
The whole industry is going to water-based anyway. So we're doing schoolwork. Nobody wants to water 90% what we do. 95%. There's some holdouts in Massachusetts. However, we can't ship to us those chemicals anymore because of our VOC regulations. We have to ship direct to the job in Massachusetts. So it's pretty clean. Anybody have any questions?
I could go through planning staff. So we'll get to this. So just for the board, the standard of review comes from section 375-506 4D. No non-conforming use may be converted to a different non-conforming use unless the Board of Zoning Appeals determines that the alternative use is in the same or less intense land use category based on table 375.302.1 permitted use table. An alternative use may only be found to be in the same or less intense land use category if it is a listed use in the permitted use table and is allowed in all zones with the same or fewer conditions than the prior legal non-conforming use. I just want to bring to your attention the 1994 use variance, which brings up a use variance to allow the operation of light industrial manufacturing for the assembly of small electronic elements, which is not a permitted use in the C-1 neighborhood commercial zoning district. This was approved in 1994. And I know you've seen this before, just wanted to bring it up. Then we have the intensity of use evaluation. So in the 1994 use variance, light manufacturing was approved. It's permitted in 3 zoning districts and conditionally permitted in 2, while the proposed use, which is primarily storage, which is under heavy commercial services, is permitted in 3 zoning districts and conditionally permitted in 2. So from the July 25th meeting with the representing agent and the applicant, a neighborhood meeting was requested to inform the neighborhood of the change to the application. If conducted, what did the neighborhood input include? Because there have been multiple changes to this application and planning staff wants to ensure the neighborhood understands the scope and use for this building.
So we had a meeting today at St. John's Church. And the pastor and I the Reverend and I have become pretty good friends. The building, presently the electricity is not on and the roof is leaking. So I didn't feel comfortable inviting people there. So we were there from 2:30 to 3:30 and nobody showed up. We sent out 25 emails. And Zach, the previous owner, made some calls to the city housing authority, but nobody showed up. So there's lots of donuts at St. John's right now. If anybody's
How-
interested.
I'm sorry.
Hi. Apologies. I wasn't at the July meeting. Am I in the line?
Yep.
Alright, yes. Mr. Brick,
Yes,
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Jerry Curran.
Very good. Hi, Mr. Curran, Julie Jones. Can I talk, I want to ask a couple questions about the neighborhood meeting, and then I have a couple of questions about what has already been shared with us. That may be a repetition of some of the things you all talked about in July, so I apologize. With respect to the neighborhood meeting, when was notice of that meeting submitted or sent out?
About a week ago, and then again this morning.
Okay, and did any of that, you said about 25 emails, did any of those include city county council members?
I don't believe so, no.
And do you know, as far as you or Mr. Brick know, whether or not the county council member who represents this neighborhood is aware or was invited to this meeting? Either this one or the one that you held earlier today?
He was not invited. However, he did throw his support initially behind us
When did the support?
before the first meeting.
Anything written? I'm sorry, I'm fine.
no, that's okay. This started out originally, my client, my client, the prior owner, had originally sought a zone change, for this. And that was not well received, by the planning board or the neighborhood for that matter. And I don't believe the local city council member, supported that. However, it's my understanding that subsequent to that, there was, the opposition was withdrawn, my understanding.
To that whole application.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is there any, ever
Well,
any
it
statement?
wasn't an application to us. It was, that's where
Yes,
change was sort of requested law or it wasn't to.
No, it goes to the planning board, who provides a recommendation to the common council, and the common council is the one who decides.
So I guess in my question to be more specific, did the county council members for this area have any input, written or otherwise, on this application?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I had called him.
Is him Derek Johnson?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And we discussed what we're already doing, South Pearl Street area. And he noted that we just fixed up a building on the corner of 4th and South Pearl. And he was very much interested. He said the building was an eyesore and that he would probably welcome us to the neighborhood.
I appreciate that. With respect to St. John's, I'm not as familiar with religious things in Albany. Is that the church down the street from this location?
It's directly across the street. So from the service road, depending on which way you're going.
Yeah,
it's
no,
kitty
I
corner.
know, exactly. And I don't know, does this neighborhood include a neighborhood association where they wanted 25 emails?
I don't believe there is a neighborhood.
There is a neighborhood association. It would be the South End Neighborhood Association. They have monthly meetings the last Tuesday of every month.
Thank you. So I will say I do have a couple more questions. I understand that there were a couple of changes to this application and a couple of changes to what you all plan to use this location for. And I think Mr. Brick mentioned that there might be a position that, you know, the light manufacturing use actually hasn't changed. And I'm just wondering, have you all anticipated or rather considered just amending your application based on that?
I mean, they wouldn't need it now.
You would have the ability to determine that what we're, as a zoning board of appeals.
No, I know what I would have to go. I'm asking, right, you put the application here, you made the point
Right.
that you think it's entirely possible that it could be made that, but you could do that by withdrawing and making a record of such, yeah?
Correct, but we could also present that as an alternative for you to consider if you didn't want to consider the modification. You would have the ability to do it.
Do you plan to present that as an alternative?
If you were interested in discussing that further, absolutely. It's what happened in July was it became a pretty in-depth discussion about zoning and the principles of zoning, and it's kind of one of those arguments. But if you look at the current definition of light manufacturing that's in the USD. And I believe that's a different definition than what existed in '94 when the variance was given. But what that definition says is light manufacturing design is the assembly, fabrication, or processing of materials using processes that ordinarily do not create noise, smoke, fumes, odors, glare, or health or safety hazards discernible outside of the building or lot where such assembly, fabrication, or processing takes place, and that do not require frequent rail or truck traffic to deliver goods or remove materials or waste, and where such processes are housed entirely within the building.
I'm so glad you, read that out with my next question. Before I take a step back and perhaps give it over to somebody else, not somebody in the was gonna be, right, you mentioned that this would be used for storage and there would be pallets. So presumably these pallets have to be dropped off by trucks. So there would presumably be an increase, trucks coming back and forth to drop these things off 2 to 3 times a week.
It depends on the jobs. And my trucks are very light trucks. There's no tractor trailers. There's not even 26,000 pound straight jobs. We don't know any of that. It's single and dual wheel box trucks. Like Amazon uses. Or
Not like Springer vans.
we also have a couple. We have a couple of, but they're very, very light vehicles.
I think just, on the matter of like whether it is for the applicant to consider withdrawing the application if they want to make the case that this use is already covered by the existing variance. I guess what I'm unclear about on the planning staff side is so there was the application submitted to planning, and then planning has then issued a decision on that said, no, we think it's heavy commercial, and that led to this application in front of us. And so that's like what we're considering is an appeal of the decision saying, no, it's not covered by light manufacturing, but it's heavy commercial. Or is this an interpretation?
I don't think it's with that. I mean,
It's a text.
well, they could apply for interpretation, I guess, but what is just before is just for consideration tonight, at least, is just the modification of that prior use variance. Because chief planning officials will make the determination that this would fall into the heavy commercial services, if we just corrected. So I would say
So is there a written decision by the planning board that's appealed or not exactly?
Sorry, do you mind if I jump in? I think the meeting minutes from the July 12th, they were the last July meeting. The meeting minutes that were adopted on August 2nd, they reflected these questions of what application and what requests the applicant is actually making. And my understanding is that the request they're making is what's before us is the request to modify an existing use variance.
Correct, to the less intense use. But I only raised that as an alternative, you could also find where in conformity with the light manufacturing definition. You have that ability. We're not asking you to,
We're not acting to respond to any, my understanding, but so it's like, what request are you making?
we're asking you to modify the prior use variance from light manufacturing to allow storage with whatever appropriate conditions that you would like to see on the property, and so that they can utilize it as a storage.
Yeah, just to jump in, my perspective would be, and probably to just split the council, but if the BZA were to consider it as in terms of the interpretation of the alternative, that would require us to define it as such. That's not how it's been presented, so I would say the discussion should be about just the modification as proposed.
Absolutely, and I did not mean to throw everybody off course. I simply wanted to know if Mr. Burke made that representation finding. Was it trying for something different, but I understand.
And to the extent I'm overly confusing it, I'll withdraw the suggestion that you can consider it as light manufacturing. I should also point out, because I forgot to in my presentation, that the current have plans to substantially, improve the appearance of the building, replace the windows and such. And that at some point in the future, once they get it up and operating for storage, they may return to the city, either the planning board or this board, to seek approvals for possibly utilizing the front of the building for either offices or residential. But clearly that would require at least a completely different site plan, because the use they're proposing now doesn't require any parking, we're not showing it. But I just did want to let you know that at some point that may be a possibility in the future. Doesn't have any impact tonight, but trying to be fully transparent.
I mean, I have questions about the landscaping plan, but I honestly don't think it's worth having that discussion if the neighborhood association and the common council member haven't been a part of these discussions, because they would know better about what that neighborhood is interested in having. So I will hold those questions.
There was also a suggestion, I'm sorry. I think by the city, the east side of the building to be mural. I have no objection to that.
Yep, that came from the July 12th meeting, I believe, Paige asked about it. That's where it came up.
They're doing all that work there. That would look nice.
I have some questions. I think Paige does it, but also just for terms of clarity for how this meeting is going right now. Some things that it sounds like my fellow board member have mentioned that it sounds like there should be a community meeting where South End Neighborhood Association is invited, or South End Community Collaborative. I think that's another group they should be invited, and a request should be made to the common council member, Councilmember Johnson, or whether or not he has any kind of opinion as to the application or request.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the same concerns that you've heard. I really will encourage you when you think about the timing of your meeting. Hosting a meeting from 2 to 3 p.m. is mostly conducive to folks who have the liberty to like come and go from their jobs or work from home. The folks that are probably largely living in this residential area are going to be occupied until 5 or 6. So you want to look at a meeting time to be in the evening. Even if it coincides with the neighborhood meeting association, you have a good chance of getting your information out there and being best received. So I would just encourage you to think about that. Because I do have the same concerns. There's been sort of a lot of confusion about what the application contains. And I think just, showing, here are the trucks that might be coming. Like, here's a picture of our Sprinter van. Here's a picture of a single or dual wheel box truck.
We already furnished this.
Great, yeah, but I would just echo that if you didn't have it, the message, like, while you may have been well intentioned to getting it out, I think it'll go a long way with that neighborhood, especially if you're looking to continue that relationship by going down the road.
Yeah, I'll just add that while it's important, we want to know what the council person thinks, it's not a requirement for them to agree or disagree. There's no required opinion, but of course we want to hear from the elected official and from the community and the neighborhood, etc.
If I could speak to that. I had no contact with the council before the initial meeting. And Hirschberg drew up a gorgeous site plan that had parking here, it had dumpster storage, it had parking on the other side of the building, on the east side. I don't need any of that. So I think the whole thing was misconstrued, and then there was a couple of groups that came in there and they saved the Hudson or something. I'm really told who it is. But I want to make you aware, between my building and the Hudson River, you got the stamp company, you got U-Haul, right in direct line. So, I mean, if you're sitting right on the water, I can see an objection. But we're basically under 787.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Amanda, could you pull up like the Google layover of?
Mhm. Do you want the street view or the aerial view?
Actually, this is good, but could you look into the my R left? Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so first I want to, some of our like staff memo, which was really excellent, talked about the purpose of the zoning district and mixed use form-based warehouse district, and that part of the stated purpose under 375-204-9. So the purpose of the MUFS district is to encourage redevelopment in the South End area. It sounds like redevelopment in the South End area by recreating a more fine-grained street system that encourages internal pedestrian and bicycle circulation, encouraging a vibrant mix of residential and non-residential uses, dissuading non-residential use, and creating new investment opportunities along the waterfront. And that this address is located in the walkable center segment of the form-based regulating plan. Can you speak to how your reuse of this property would encourage internal pedestrian and bicycle circulation? With this question.
I think the bicycle path is right next to my building. It runs literally under 787. So from basically the corner where it says 787 at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the bicycle path right to the right of that.
Okay. So would these trucks, like Sprinter vans and the other 1 to 2 wheel vehicles, would that preclude pedestrians and bicyclists from traversing on that path?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
They'd be accessing the property on the southwest corner of the property,
Correct.
bottom left of the green line. Right there.
Right there.
Okay. I'm going somewhere with this. And I don't know. I don't have a background in planning, so like I don't know about this a whole lot, but so the fact that this is located in the walkable center segment of the form-based regulating plan, my limited understanding, not being a professional planner, is actually form-based. A form-based district, that the district prioritizes the form of buildings rather than the use of the building. Is that correct?
It's complicated, but yeah, essentially it's there. We also regulate it to some extent youth. With that specific component, the walkable center segment is more about is different. There's different requirements in terms of like the dimensional or design standards,
Okay.
setback requirements. Otherwise, a lot might need to be things like that. There's a few caveats within the code in terms of how the walkable center or other districts would impact the uses, but in this case, it doesn't change that.
Okay, so then I guess based on what I know at face value, I'm encouraged that this different use doesn't undermine community character from what we at least have been presented with. You know, that it could the reuse of this vacant building is good for the city and is a better way to promote green development rather than demolishing it and building space, a new building anew. But for the 787 chalk, while there's no statutory requirement for this, you know, just for community awareness, the fact that reimagining 787 is in the works currently. There's like a $5 million planning study underway for it. So whether 787 is demolished or if it's reimagined, there's a boulevard place there. People are going to want more access to their waterfront. We don't have a waterfront access requirement under our city code currently, and there might actually be taking spot implications with that. But people want access to the waterfront, and how have you thought about facilitating that?
I'm a long way from the work.
You're within you're like in the triangle of.
There is literally industry everywhere between me and the waterfront.
Okay, well, I would ask that you give it some thought. And in terms of,
Do you have any idea what I could do for facilitate that?
I mean, I believe we have sidewalks on both sides of that.
We now have, not on both sides. On the west side, we now have a sidewalk because we cleaned it up and cut all the crap back and everything else. And I'm sure as part of the building permit, we require where the driveway is, we require handicap. I'm sure. So,
okay,
yeah. As far as landscaping. So last Sunday afternoon, I drove by the building as I own other property down there. It's my route. I got tagged on the whole side of the east side of the building. I'm sorry, west side of the building. So on Monday, we took some gray paint, made a nice square block because you can't match what's faded, and painted it. 2 days later, we got tagged again. And subsequently, I painted it again. But as far as a lot of landscaping goes, I just assume leave it open, and I'm going to provide some downlighting. Maybe word some of that.
okay. And so I guess to sum up my questions, I guess I would ask you to think about what efforts you would take to encourage alternative transportation connectivity. But there's already the bike path, but whether that's putting maybe lights on it or putting greenery around it. Again, with the building's location in Walkable Center Park, of form-based regulating plan, and it's going to think about what proactive steps we can take to encourage access to water.
Can I clarify something that was said about the handicap accessibility in the parking lot? So is that a requirement for this project? It was mentioned.
Sidewalk.
Okay.
The sidewalk at this point does not have handicap access.
Okay.
So I'm sure through a building permit to change a little bit of the loading dock, the city will require, and that's handicap. I don't think the other corner is handicapped accessible either.
Yeah, the like ADA parking that would be triggered if there was parking being provided for this type of use. It's not a trigger, and then they don't have their own lot, so there's not a need to comply with adding an ADA space.
Does the current Google Street View capture the bike path relative to the ingress and egress for the delivery truck?
No. That's the bike path right where that arrow is, basically right behind it. East side of the building. As you notice, we've cleaned it up quite a bit already.
That picture's old.
Yeah, that picture's old. That's the sidewalk. Not so much there, but further south, you couldn't even see the sidewalk. I think there's some new photos you had up earlier.
Then I walk back towards the highway.
This way?
Because I think just at the last meeting, we talked about that, right? The property here, can you please? Yeah. Right, the property ends somewhere here, and then the city owns the other part of the triangle, right? Or something like that. And it doesn't, the city have a plan? Like, wasn't that discussed at the last meeting, or is it on the other side?
It's
or-
already been done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you go back to the first pictures you had up, I think there was a photo of that. Yeah, my property line basically from that telephone pole
Uh-huh.
back to where, I don't know why, stops at the corner of the building, but it does. The back of the building is my block wall.
And our access is mainly going to be that lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, from 9th Street.
Yeah, but right off the access road.
Right, that's what I want to see straight.
Yeah, we're, like I said, not requiring a parking lot.
That's
That's all.
where you get in. You can't even see that.
Can't even see it.
That's a bit.
But if you go to the new pictures, I cleaned all that brush. There you go.
Wait, so Abby or Nana, can you talk about, wasn't there speed property and a plan, I guess the, or something in the future?
Yeah, South End Connector is phase 2 right now, so it's under construction, murals, I could pull it up. But it's a bike path connecting 2 other bike paths, but it's under construction right now, so I could
But
pull
is
it.
it in that, like,
So it's a little hard to see, but the picture farther to the right, you can see like some landscaping that was planted. Because if you think of it, it's kind of like an angle for where their property line is.
okay,
So to the left is where the South End Connector is.
okay, so the city planted those.
Yep.
From the photo. All right.
Is it a city contract or a state?
With the city.
Is it city?
I think, for someone from the state, you might.
Yeah, I mean, there's involvement from the city, but it's a project through the city.
Can I, sorry, I want to go back to one point. Appreciate someone saying all that. I have a question, and I don't know if this question is appropriate for the applicant or for planning staff. I know I've heard a little bit about, and when Martha was asking her question, Mr. Kerner, you seem totally open to some landscaping changes, but I want to be clear, does the code, my understanding is that parts of the code require some sort of landscaping plan. Is that incorrect?
That is correct. There are landscaping requirements. Some of them are just hit based on the trigger for the scope of work that's done to a site. In this case, it's not something to rise the level of a development plan review. So it's likely that a lot of the standards and regulations in the code would not be applied to the site.
So things like requiring like a bench or like trash can or
Right.
trees or
Yep.
things are not necessarily required, but would certainly be appreciated, I'm sure.
And I would also add, as a zoning board, you have the ability to impose reasonable conditions on any approval you consider, so.
Mr. Rick, you can tell me what I can do. No.
And I also would like to thank Senator. Thank you.
I think the last thing is nothing else. I just want to go back a little bit because you brought it up. You mentioned a potential future plan to change the use to include office / maybe residential. And I just, you told us this is just a store word bringing in and out, so I kind of want to understand. And you brought this up, so you didn't have to tell us, but it's not exactly relevant to this application, but I guess if we're gonna consider changing the use to the property, I want to understand what the potential office or residential use would be here.
Sure, and let the current speak to this.
Thank you.
For the idea that he's more familiar with the building than I. But, the Currents have been good neighbors in the South End for years, and, they've always been fully open and transparent with the city. They have a great working relationship, and we didn't want to come in and request something and then be back in 6 months and see something different. So
I appreciate that.
we wanted to let you know right away. The priority is they need the storage.
Yeah.
So they want to get the building stabilized. They want to be able to utilize it for storage. But there's more to that building than just the storage area. So they would just want to reserve the right to possibly look at the front part of that building and see if there's something else they can do with it in the future. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention because any approval you consider for the storage, I want you to be aware that there is a potential for future use, so you condition any approval you grant on the storage appropriately. Clearly, any type of residential or office wouldn't fall under the existing variances as they exist or as they are modified in a manner that we are seeking. So it would require a de novo application requesting something, completely different than what we're seeking here.
But, I mean, would residential be allowed, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so the, some of the other uses that were mentioned would be allowed with the office.
Yeah,
No,
so that, like.
The residential got-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, residential got tossed into the mix.
Yeah.
Early on. I've sold all my residential properties. In long in the tooth. And, I have no interest in residential. My thought was, maybe artist loft. The Reverend, Johnson has, indicated he has interest on the first floor for some classrooms, which would work out really well because they could park in his park. So that's just, I just didn't want to, yeah, yeah.
You brought it up, so I wanted to go all the way with
I
that.
want to mix the residential idea.
Okay, understood, thank you for it.
And I only raised it because we're seeking a modification. So whatever you consider a granting modification could have reasonable conditions upon including any additional use sought, has to return to the city or for reevaluation, however you structure it. We just wanted to let you know that it is a possibility.
Audrey, could you clarify what you were saying about office space?
Just that for the permitted use table, it would be allowed, as of right, we can have the existing zoning district.
So if they wanted to have offices, they wouldn't have to come back, make any additional requests.
Correct, yeah, I mean, because they can always go to something that is permitted.
And make sure you're planning review, but.
Depending on the scope of work, yeah.
We did have somebody signed up to speak. I'm not sure where he is at the moment, but we do have, and I'm just gonna call her out now, Joanne Moran, who's the president of the South End Neighborhood Association. I'm not sure if she wants to provide any comments, but just, yep.
So I think,
So
because the record like.
Yep. Yeah, if you could state your name, what you do for Cena, and then there is a 3-minute limit, and then the applicant has the ability to rebut, and then.
My name is Joanne Ward. President of South End Neighborhood Association. And just learned about this meeting yesterday. I was, so heard as I was driving on the road that you met today. There was a meeting today, which I heard there was a meeting, but in terms of time, I never received an invite. We just had a new association class. We would appreciate Mr. Carroll coming to the neighborhood association. What it is. I think a year ago when the application was put in, there was some opposition that we used that to change the zoning. So it's my understanding, correct. Now we're not trying to change the zone, trying to change the use. And I'd just like to know more about that, and I'm sure the residents of the South that we as well. And I think I asked this question to you yesterday. Always use, if it's just storage, why couldn't we use the existing areas? You said I don't want to say, people will be opposed to it, my concern. My personal concern now is, you do have a bike trail on the east side of the building. You're putting in pads for in the trucks and things like that. But if the zoning is not changing, so that it's becoming like the industrial thing, which prevented a lot of other types of developments. I would have an issue with that, but I'm not speaking for everyone at this point. I would prefer if they could, meet with the neighborhood. I'm not sure who you emailed regarding that for today. But last time I spoke to Mr. Johnson, he just said they got a request for the building to be used for the. He didn't know the details of that. So I think, it's, fairness to them, and to the community, for, if a decision will be with LC, so that we can try to get together with more community, say, our council to discuss it.
So, your opinion-
Thank you. Thank you.
We're just, because there's a process, so we're gonna avoid some situations talking to the board, you're gonna have a chance to respond. But right now, we're having a change and we're accepting public comment. We're trying to avoid direct discussions. You can have those after the meeting if you wish. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I think, at the beginning of the meeting, I went over that they needed to check in with the association, the common council member, things like that. I think we agree with you. We also have comments about 2 to 3 p.m. meetings in the middle of the workday. Not very convenient with public discussion, things like that. So I think we agree with you that we want to see better outreach and better communication with the neighborhood on this. I think, and Amanda and Abby can do probably a much better job of this, but since you are here, so what's currently going on is, as we said over a year ago, there was initially a proposal to change the zoning for that area. That is definitely scratched off the table. We've had a lot of back and forth actually at the beginning of the meeting as to what this current application is exactly about, because like you said, that's a little bit unfair to everyone, and there's some questions of confusion there, but if I try and summarize it, the current application from the applicant that's in front of the board for consideration is a request to change the use variance that was granted in 1994. So in 1994, use variance was granted for that property, allowing light manufacturing. The current applicant is requesting that we change that to heavy commercial services, which is in the uses of the current USDO of lighter use than the current the light manufacturing, or at least that's the argument. And I mean, it is listed lower, which I think it's that, but I guess that is part of what we have to decide and confirm whether we agree that it's a smaller use, because we can only modify the variance to something lesser than what's, we can't go and give more, basically. So the standard for us is to look at the request for modification and consider whether or not the use is similar or less intensive. So, yeah, that's my summary. I think that provided a little bit of input, but I think Mr. Brake, we have to will reach out and yeah, I think we're not going to make it. Thank you. Is the applicant like, or is there someone else? Okay, no. Is there anyone online who has a comment?
Not at this time, no.
Because for future reference, we do take in comments live if you don't want to come in first.
have to figure that out.
Yeah, thank you. I think you wanted to add something.
I was just wondering whether stop and you want us to wait till your next public meeting, or should we invite certain people?
Please, please address the board.
Yeah.
Please address the board.
Together, if you want to, after the meeting,
Okay.
feel free, but right now it's more like, if you want to add anything, having heard the comments and let us know anything based on that. It sounds like you're indicating that you may be reaching out, so that's something you might want to tell us, that, you know, you've heard us and you've heard the comments and, you might consider more outreach.
Yeah, I have a problem with that.
We will coordinate, after the meeting, to see if it's more appropriate for us to attend their next planned meeting or to schedule something outside of their regular scheduled meetings. We will definitely speak.
And so there was another group you said.
Southern Community Collaborative, the name,
Yes, South End Community Collaborative, they meet every Tuesday at 9 a.m. via Zoom. And there's the South End Neighborhood Association, which means the last Tuesday every month at 6 p.m. I believe currently for the South End Community Collaborative, Tom McFeeters is the moderator.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it's something else. Well, I think staff could maybe reach out. I
However, the board prefers, yeah.
So we, you know, set up these meetings relatively quickly, so we'd ask if you are gonna table it. It sounds like you've done it, to consider tabling to your next available meeting, so we can come right back next month, hopefully with a favorable report from the neighbors.
I was going to, I think to kind of help the board make any determinations in the future. What planning staff would recommend is just articulating at this point any additional information that you're looking for, so the applicant can, attempt to provide that. So again, kind of just referring back to the standards of review, and if there's particular information you think that could be attained to, substantiate the record.
So yeah, I'll more fine tune what I had said earlier. So in alignment with the purpose of the MUFS zoning district, can you please provide information of how your reuse of the building would encourage internal pedestrian and bicycle circulation? And with respect to it, the property being located near or along the waterfront, that might be a matter of semantics of whether or not it is along the waterfront. But I think you still are in a position where the property is located. You are in a position to promote the maintenance and or extension of public access to the river in a manner that is compatible with the primary purpose of the proposed development or activity. So I'm not saying, create a path to the river, but there already is a bike and pedestrian path there. So to the extent you can install street furniture or bike, but like bollards or something that you
Like
can
bike racks.
on for a bench.
Or even just to add to that, how your project is not hurting that larger goal of that zoning district. For example, with trucks coming, in and out occasionally, making sure that the drive is clearly indicated, sight lines are there, just in case when it's on the sidewalk, just things that show your conscience that your building sits in a larger sort of ecosystem of this community.
And I'll just add to that, because it's probably part of it, would likely be part of it, but I'd ask for a landscape plan. And then I guess just to wrap up, meaningful outreach to different associations.
that covers it all.
And I think it sounds like you've already done some landscaping work, like some cleaning up work. We saw a couple photos, but maybe, if you want to take a couple more photos to show us kind of like the cleanup that's there, and that I assume that maybe that, like, cleaner, you know, keeping the weeds out, but I mean, the site has been overgrown and not abandoned for long, so, yeah, I don't want you to walk away from this meeting and it's like, oh, we're just red tape and it's just annoying and slowing things down, right? Because I think, you know, it's great and it's exciting to see, you know, that you already own properties in the neighborhood, you're buying an abandoned building, or you already bought it, or anyway, you're keeping business and best business, and, you know, that is appreciated, that's, recognized and not ignored. I think we just want you to, you know, make sure you come to the community, consider that, and consider because that property is so, you know, tied into the bike path, so close to all of that, to the river, you know, to what's happening to that neighborhood and to the development that's going on. We just want to make sure, you know, that as you invest into that, you know, business, that property, that you're really fully taking that into consideration. Do we need a motion to table? Yes.
I would say just to make a motion to table it based on the request for more information.
I know that we tabled this application, subject to the items that various board members have requested of the applicant, which I will not take the time version.
Second. Julie, can you vote?
Yes.
Martha?
Yeah.
Paige? Yes. Everyone has a yes. That's all in favor. So this is tabled until January 12th. And until we go back to more information.
Thank you.
Minutes. There's minutes from 2 meetings. Anyone, any thoughts, comments, edits, issues with the minutes?
I'm gonna abstain from the older set of minutes, as I was not yet a member board.
I will move to adopt the September 13th meeting.
Second. Paige, can you vote? Yeah. Martha?
Yes.
Julie's abstaining.
Abstain.
I am a yes. And minutes from the earlier October. Yeah.
Of October 4th.
I move that we adopt those.
Second.
Okay, Julie, can you vote?
Okay.
Martha?
Yes.
Paige? Yes. Adrian, yes. Minute approved. And we review things like chair discussions from the meeting. I think that's the first thing.
Just need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, yes. There you go.
I move that we adjourn.
Second. Lisa, did you vote?
We.
Yes. Adrian, yes.